family because there is a lot of background involved. I'm a 44-year-old man who has been married for 10 years. My 41-year-old wife and I have been together for 13 years. We are content with our lives and have an 8-year-old kid as well. I have been married before though. I married at the age of 22, but regrettably, for reasons I'm still unclear, our marriage ended in divorce 3 years later. Since middle school, my ex-wife, who I'll call Amy, has been with me. We were essentially childhood lovers. We made the decision to be married as soon as we were out of college and had respectable careers. For the first few years, everything was good between us, but then, for some reason, things started to go strange. After that, I felt as though she was not interested at all, despite my best efforts to maintain the spark. A few weeks before our third wedding anniversary, she handed me divorce papers and declared she was done, despite my best efforts to win her back. My goal was to improve our marriage. She was only able to tell me that she was no longer in love with me, which was all I wanted as an explanation for why we had to break up after all this time together. I was furious, but there was nothing I could do about it. Since I had no other choice and didn't want to prolong the divorce and make her even more unhappy by making her live with me, I made the decision to proceed. Because of the limited number of shared assets we had, the process was really simple. I never saw her again after that. After the divorce was finalized, she changed towns and shut off all communication, according to a few people I spoke with. Even my relatives stopped talking to me around the time of the divorce, which was incredibly odd, but this is usual. When I was going through a really trying time, they ought to have been there for me, but instead they began to distance themselves from me. I made a concerted effort to stay in contact with them once the divorce was finalized, but I discovered that I had been blocked everywhere. I even made a few attempts to go see them, but neither my sister nor my parents ever let me in. It all struck me hard because it was so weird and I was already going through a difficult period. I couldn't even bring myself to do anything for a few years following the divorce, so I quit my work and spent a few months at home without a job. But I'm really fortunate to have friends by my side who encouraged me to attempt to move on and do better even during such trying moments. After the divorce, my friends looked after me because my family was never there for me. I ultimately made the decision to open my own eatery. Although it had always been my ambition, I had put it off in order to accumulate sufficient funds because I also needed to consider Amy during our marriage. But because we were divorced, I made the decision to go ahead and do it alone. I also chose to call the restaurant the name my parents had recommended. My buddies helped me approach a few potential investors, secure their support and begin developing a business plan. I opened my own restaurant a few years later. After the divorce, it took me about 4 years to get back on my feet. I met my current wife 2 years later. We started conversing after she told me she loved my restaurant at a function where we met through friends. I asked her to marry me after 3 years of dating because I wanted to give love another try. Here we are with our son 10 years later. My business life has also improved over the past few years, in addition to my personal life. In my career, I've done fairly well. It all began with a restaurant, but because of its success, we gradually started to grow. I am the CEO of my own hospitality firm at the moment, and we operate a chain of hotels and restaurants that are quite well liked. We intend to grow it even further in the hopes of gaining recognition outside of the state. I have put a lot of effort into getting to where I am now, but it has been a difficult journey. Since of this, I recently agreed to an interview since I felt it was an indication that I had truly made it. However, after seeing that interview on the television, my family decided to get in touch with me again, and I honestly had no clue that it would generate such a storm in my life. I didn't really think my family would have watched it because the channel that carried it was a somewhat popular one. Even if they had, I didn't think they would arrive at my workplace. My workplace's location isn't particularly discreet, so they must have had little trouble finding me. Still, it was highly improper of them to arrive at my place of employment and insist on seeing me while I was there. Regretfully, they did precisely that 3 days ago. Seeing them after all this time was really odd. The receptionist told me that my family was waiting outside when they arrived, even though I was working. I initially assumed she was referring to my wife and kid, which would have been strange given that my son was at school and my wife was at work. She went on to say that my sister and parents were present to see me. I was having trouble processing what was happening at the time. I informed the receptionist that they would have to be ordered to go for the time being, but I would see them later. Naturally, they persisted and were making a scene, so I had to step in. Before I could talk to them and find out what was going on, I didn't want security to eject them from the premises. I therefore walked to the lobby to see them. They immediately pretended that nothing had changed in the over 2 decades since I had last seen them. They started praising me right away, telling me how wonderful it was that I had achieved enough accomplishment to make the headlines and how motivational my tale was. They should have been included in that story as members of my family, so hearing them say it felt odd. They began discussing how they had seen my family, but I tried to dismiss it by telling them I had to return to work. I had mentioned in my interview how helpful my wife and son had been to me along the way. They were referring to certain family images that were also featured on the channel. Since they had been away from us for a while, they began to express a wish to meet my wife and their grandson as soon as possible. At that point, they said I should have done more to reach out to them after the divorce and chastised me for not trying hard enough. It dawned on me that I might at last be able to find out what had transpired at that time. Therefore, rather than telling them to leave, I chose to let them speak. In an attempt to find some closure, I even sat down with them in the lobby. During their conversation, I learned the true reason my family had deserted me and why Amy had chosen to divorce me. Yes, Amy had been cheating on me, as you may have surmised by now. My parents had been helping her hide it the entire time, so I had never suspected it. However, they stated that they had their reasons, or at least, those they believed to be legitimate, so don't pass judgment too hastily. Amy had apparently been having an affair with my cousin, who was the son of my dad's older brother. Everything made sense when they eventually told me. I now saw why they had supported her, why I hadn't received an invitation to any family gatherings for the previous 20 years, and why I had been rejected without any fault of my own. I had never liked my cousin, let's call him Carl, since he was a rude, entitled brat. Unfortunately, his father and the rest of the family felt he should be given a free pass for everything because his mother had died when he was only 6 months old. No one ever told him how to act throughout his life, and he consistently got away with anything. The fact that my uncle, Carl's father, was my dad's supervisor and had founded the family business before my dad joined it didn't help either. When Carl decided he wanted to be with Amy after we were married and she agreed, my family felt compelled to support them. They couldn't take the chance of upsetting my uncle. But apparently it was easy for them to decide to risk their friendship with me. They did precisely that. They also informed me that my uncle made it very apparent during the divorce that he did not want any family members, including my parents and sister, to communicate with me in any way. After Amy said she was expecting my child, they apparently attempted to object. They would have to cut me off if they ever wished to communicate with their grandson. In addition, when Amy filed for divorce, I was never informed that she was expecting a child. I couldn't have predicted because she hadn't been displaying at the time either. She had moved out long before the divorce was finalized, so she hadn't been living with me. Therefore, even before my son was born, I was unaware that I had become a father. It seems that my daughter, who is now almost 20, believes Carl is her biological father even though she has never met me. In any case, my parents told me this about what actually occurred all those years ago. It felt like I was being told a story, and I was hardly able to process any of it at the time. To acknowledge that this was my reality, I had to pinch myself. My family thought that by achieving job security and establishing a bond with their granddaughter, they had effectively cut me off. They had cut me off because, in my opinion, they were simply cowards. They could have simply told me the truth and let me deal with it, but instead they decided to be scared of my dad's brother, acting as though he could do more than just drive my father out of the family business. My dad could have taken legal action in retaliation even at that point. I honestly can't think of a reason why you didn't notify me about Amy's pregnancy or the fact that I have a daughter. They sat on this for 20 years without saying anything until they realized I was doing well in life. They suddenly felt a great deal of pity for everything and wanted to make amends with me. Sadly for them, I was able to see through their deception. I told them I needed them to go as soon as they were done telling me everything because I didn't have the capacity to forgive them right now after what they had just told me. Since we were seated in my workplace's lobby and I didn't want to start a fight, I made an effort to be polite. I couldn't, however, rely on others to act similarly. As soon as I told them to go, they began complaining that I should consider their point of view and how challenging the situation had been for them as well. I informed them that I was positive they were only contacting me now because they wanted a share of my success. They strongly rejected it. My sister even went so far as to argue that they were the reason I was successful in the first place, as they had come up with the name for my restaurant back when it was still just a dream. Given that they hadn't helped me over the years and that I had created everything on my own with the assistance of my friends rather than them, I thought it was rather brave of her to make such a claim. It wasn't enough for them to claim credit for my accomplishment just because they suggested a name. I laughed at her because the idea was so ridiculous. I threatened to have her and my parents ejected from the building if they didn't leave right away. They persisted in their argument, stating that they would not go until we had resolved our differences. But I was not interested in carrying on the discussion. I therefore carried out my promise and had security eject them from the building. As they were being led away, They were obviously very unhappy and tried attempting to convince me that they had no other option. However, I don't believe that. They had an option, but they chose poorly, and now they will have to live with the repercussions. They have survived the previous 20 years without seeing me or my family, so I have no doubt that they will be able to do the same in the future. In any case, they haven't stopped attempting to get in touch with me 3 days after this happened. They haven't had the guts to return inside my workplace, but they have been showing up outside, sending emails to my work address, and texting me on social media. Their attitude has clearly changed as seen by the numerous apologies in their mails. They appear somewhat agitated as they wait for me to stop for them outside my place of employment. However, I ignore them and simply drive past. I almost feel sorry for them now because of how horrible things have gone. To be honest, I've discussed this with my wife because, no matter what I do about my family, we still need to consider my daughter, whom I was unaware of until a few days ago. We have been debating whether or not to track down my daughter and attempt to get in touch with her. We also have to deal with my family, who I don't think will leave until they have another opportunity to talk to me. My wife believes that perhaps I should invite them over and have a conversation with them in order to at least try to resolve the issue. Since this circumstance isn't healthy for my emotional health, she thinks it might help get rid of all the toxicity. But I'm not personally interested in doing it. Given everything I've learned and what I'm going through right now, I don't have the mental capacity to deal with them, so I just want to keep ignoring them till they go away. We are struggling greatly to decide how to proceed and handle this. After 20 years of no communication, I also question whether I'm wrong for not wanting to give my parents another chance to talk. Update 1. A week and 3 days have passed since my initial post, and my spouse and I have made the decision to keep ignoring my relatives. Fortunately, they haven't been showing up to my place of employment for the previous several days. This is most likely due to their fatigue or fear of security. In any case, I'm glad. It was much simpler for me to quit thinking about them after they stopped visiting. It appears that I was feeling guilty about how I was handling the matter because of their presence. I no longer feel bad about not responding to their texts. No matter how many times they apologize, nothing will change. No amount of apologies will make up for the fact that they have failed me as a family. I'm not even bothering to block them anymore, even though they've kept sending messages from different accounts and email addresses. What's the point? I'll continue to ignore them even if they try to apologize by making new accounts. We'll see how long they can continue this. Let's go on to the other problem we are facing, my daughter. Neither my wife nor I knew how to handle the matter. My parents told me where she attends college throughout our talk, so we have her name. I haven't taken any action yet, but my assistant was able to locate her social media profiles. I am unsure of if it is appropriate for me to contact her, and I'm unsure of how to inform her that I am her biological father. I can't just walk up to Amy's house and demand custody or anything because she's not a kid. Furthermore, given what I've learned about Amy, I'd prefer not to have her involved in this at all. I no longer have any regard for that woman or my family as a whole because they are all cowards with no courage, and I don't want anything to do with them. I can't say the same for my kid though. She is still my biological daughter, regardless of who reared her. Please let me know if you have any suggestions about how to approach her or if I should even be doing this. I also want to thank everyone who left a remark on my first post. I hope you can help me again because your advice has been incredibly useful. Update 2. My wife and I made the decision to move ahead after reading the comments on my last update. Waiting for the ideal moment or chance to get in touch with my daughter was pointless. We had to remove the band-aid and finish the job. We thought it wouldn't be appropriate to fly out to her because she lives in a different state, so we chose to message her first and see how things work out. We messaged her on Instagram and gave her the most polite explanation possible. We are merely awaiting a response at this time. She will undoubtedly find it difficult to accept, just as it is for me. The fact that my wife has been so understanding of my efforts to reconnect with my long-lost kid from my previous marriage is beyond me. We're trying our best, but I'm sure it's bringing up a lot of complex feelings for all of us. I would love to establish a relationship with my daughter, therefore I sincerely hope she responds. My parents haven't visited my place of employment in a long time. They wrote me a lengthy email yesterday in which they expressed their sincere regret for everything and their want to mend our friendship. They only required one opportunity. Additionally, they indicated they would wait for me to get in touch with them before contacting me again. To be honest, I'm a little relieved that they finally understood that I don't want to talk to them at this time. The last thing I need is for them to add additional drama to my already full plate. All I can hope for now is that they follow through on their promise and don't get in touch with me again. I will talk to them myself if I feel ready or want to at any time. But at this point, it doesn't appear probable that this will occur anytime soon. The situation has only gotten worse now that I know the true reason they haven't spoken to me in 20 years. I don't think the feeling of betrayal and hurt will go away anytime soon. There was at least one positive outcome from this. I learned more about my daughter, and I'm hoping she will choose to give our relationship another shot. In case she doesn't want to speak with us, I haven't yet told my kid about her. I don't want to give him unrealistic expectations. But if everything works out, he might see her as a sister, and I might meet the daughter I never knew I had. Right now, I'm feeling a lot of different emotions, and I'm making a lot of effort to control them. Update 3. I made contact with my daughter on social media approximately 2 weeks ago. I messaged her, telling her everything about myself and our relationship. I finally got a response today after waiting for 2 weeks. She only mentioned that she had discussed me with her mother and that she had discovered that I am her biological father. She was shocked by this, of course. She had no notion that she wasn't Carl's daughter and had thought he was her biological father for the last 20 years. She also told me that she wanted to see me and my family after learning the real tale of how her mother and I got to be this way. Since she doesn't have the money to visit us at this time and isn't talking to her family, we are taking a plane to see her this weekend. She didn't go into too much detail, but Amy first attempted to deny the message when she challenged her about it. But in the end, she had to be honest with her. Since I don't want to talk to Amy, I sincerely hope she doesn't get in touch with me. I haven't heard from her yet. When my family learned that I had contacted my daughter, they promptly betrayed their word and began attempting to speak with me. My uncle was obviously upset that I found out, and rightfully so, as they had worked for 20 years to make sure I never found out so that their lives wouldn't be disturbed. I've learned that my uncle is blaming my parents. My dad still fears his older brother, despite the fact that he no longer works for him and owns his own company. He has been pleading with me to explain that neither Carl nor my uncle were involved in my discovery, but I fail to understand the purpose. They are the only ones who could have maintained such a secret, so even if I did, I doubt anyone would believe me. The majority of my family has never been close to me, and they haven't bothered to talk to me in 20 years. It's amusing how frantic they are right now to keep their friendship with my uncle intact. But to be honest, I don't give a damn. I lost out on 20 years of a relationship with my daughter because of them. This, I believe, is the least I can do. Update 4. I finally got to meet my kid today with my family. It was initially uncomfortable, then moved, but overall it was simply lovely. Despite having grown up with two of the worst people I've ever met, she seems to be a decent and caring person. She is a very mature and clever young woman, whether it is due to her natural disposition or to the fact that they raised her well. During our lengthy talk, we discussed Amy and Carl's situation. She told me that she didn't care that they didn't approve of her meeting us. She doesn't care what her folks think now that she knows the truth. She doesn't intend to eliminate Amy and Carl from her life entirely because they don't have any other children but her, but she will undoubtedly put them out of her life for a while as she tries to come to terms with everything. She informed me that she also needed time to begin developing a relationship with me. I completely understand that she's in a really strange mental state at the moment. She seemed to get along well with my wife and her half-brother, and we had a great day overall. During supper, we discovered that my parents, who are her grandparents, had maintained communication with her throughout the entire time. Given that they were her grandfather's brother's family rather than her biological grandparents, she always thought it was odd how sentimental they were about her. Now they understand why they were so devoted to her. But now that she has learned all of this, she and I both view them differently. Since I'm a lot older than her, I can probably relate to her feelings, but not totally. Having been deceived by those she thought were closest to her throughout her life, she is just 20 years old and is likely finding it much more difficult to cope. In any case, we will both need to work on this, and maybe things will improve in the future. We're going to make an effort to make it the greatest it can be, so I know it must be. The fact that the meeting went well and that my family and I both seem satisfied after everything makes me very happy. No matter what Carl, Amy, or my family have done, I'm also rather happy with the situation. The important thing is that we finally have an opportunity to put things right after all these years, and I'm going to take advantage of it. My sister attacked me and stole my boyfriend 6 years ago. Now, my parents are attempting to reconcile us by inviting my estranged sister to my bridal shower. My sister is 26 and I'm 28. After a horrible incident that I will describe in a moment, we haven't spoken for about 6 years. For whatever reason, my parents never discouraged the fierce sibling rivalry that existed between my sister and me as we grew up. They would really encourage us to compete more. In retrospect, I don't think that was a smart move because it caused us to become really envious of one another. Perhaps our relationship would have been better if they had taken care of it sooner rather than later. When we were younger, We could at least occasionally set aside our differences. But as we became older, our animosity for one another increased. When we reached high school, we hardly spoke to one another, and we enjoyed it that way. After that, I left for college and only saw my sister when I got home, which was somewhat preferable than always being around someone who was unpleasant. I began dating my fiancé around the time I was set to graduate. He finally plucked up the courage to ask me out before I graduated from college, after we had been friends for 3 years. Since I too thought he was great, I said sure. Since we had been friends for years and it didn't seem like a huge deal, I moved in with him after graduation. I brought him home for supper one weekend after we had been dating for 3 months because I wanted to introduce him to my parents. It just so happened that my sister, who had just begun college, had also made the decision to spend the weekend at home. It was already a formula for disaster, and we were both there. At the time, my life was going really well. I had a lovely boyfriend, a career, and my own apartment. My sister, however, wasn't doing as well. She was angry that she had to settle for her second choice of college after failing to get into her first choice. My parents later told me that she was having a hard time making friends at college, which is why she was coming home so frequently. I could tell my sister wasn't pleased when I presented my boyfriend to my parents. In the background, she pouted. I introduced them even though my partner was aware of my tense connection with her. She instantly turned on her charm as I introduced her. I tried not to be bothered by it, even though it seemed strange. But then things became more bizarre. My sister was very interested in my boyfriend's life and kept attempting to talk to him when we were all sitting around talking. We were both frightened, but we remained silent. Then she went too far and began openly flirting with him in front of me throughout dinner. She wasn't even subtle about it. She was clearly doing it to annoy me. I didn't want my boyfriend to realize how dysfunctional our family was. So I tried to ignore it for a time, but I was at my breaking point. Since he was my lover, I lost my temper and urged my sister to stop since it was repulsive that she was flinging herself at him in that manner. She simply rolled her eyes and continued to speak to him. I snapped and screamed at her, telling her that he was my visitor and that she should show him respect since she was making him feel uncomfortable. She was only assisting my lover in realizing that there were alternatives to me, and I recall her saying that he deserved better. We began cursing at each other because of the manner she stated it, which really irritated me. She wasn't doing as well as I was, so I dubbed her a loser and stated she was resentful. She was deeply affected by that remark. She pulled me over and slapped me after grabbing my hair across the table. Since we hadn't had a physical altercation since middle school, I was initially too surprised to respond. However, it escalated into a full-fledged fight after she struck me. We were so violent that my boyfriend and our parents had to break us apart. Even though we were both hurt and scratched up by the end, we continued to yell at one another. It was my partner who pulled me away, got me in the car, and drove us home while attempting to reassure me the whole time. That conflict might have lasted much longer if he hadn't been beside me, so I was glad to have him by my side because I was pretty worked up. I completely stopped talking to my sister after this episode. Although we had battled previously, it had never been this vicious. For me, it was the final straw. Since I was already living apart from her, I must admit that I no longer felt compelled to think of her as a member of my family. My parents called me the day following the event to inform me that they had reprimanded my sister. They hoped we could work things out in the end, even if she wasn't prepared to apologize. I informed them that I had no interest in resolving the matter. I didn't want anything to do with her anymore, therefore I wanted our relationship to stay awful. They attempted to convince me otherwise, but I reminded them they shared some of the responsibility. They had never recognized our fierce sibling rivalry since we were little and had even fostered it. They therefore couldn't be shocked that we didn't want to be together. We got into a fight because they didn't agree with me. They apologized over the phone a few days later and acknowledged their error. It seemed a little meaningless at the moment, but I've forgiven them. Even though I had already made the decision not to talk to my sister, I didn't want to sever my ties with my parents. It's been 6 years since that happened, and I haven't spoken to my sister since. But as long as they don't pressure me to make amends, I don't mind that my parents and she have a typical relationship. We seldom talk, but I have seen her at family gatherings. We avoid each other, even on holidays, and I like it that way. We don't get along, and everyone in the family knows it, but no one understands why. They only know that we got into a fight, and I haven't changed anything because neither of us looked good after it. I kept it a secret from my family for over 6 years, but during my bridal shower, I finally revealed the truth. In addition to my bridesmaids, my maid of honor had only invited close relatives and friends. Since we weren't adhering to the custom of just inviting women, my fiancé was also present. I wanted everyone I cared about to be there. Nevertheless, My parents chose to invite my estranged sister as well for whatever reason. Sincerely, I have no idea what they were thinking, but I was taken aback when they entered with her. I was surprised to discover that my sister appeared just as surprised to see me. When they walked in, the room became quiet, and there seemed to be a standoff. My parents approached me and spoke to us both after what seemed like a lifetime. They said that a lot had changed in the 6 years following the tragedy. Above all, they expected us to make amends because they thought we were older and more mature. Her face made it obvious that my sister had been duped by her parents to get her there. I informed my parents they had no right to do this on such a significant day for me before she could say anything. I gently requested that they go with my sister. My parents wouldn't leave, so I tried to maintain my dignity so as not to ruin the occasion. They advised me to move on from the past. They gave the impression that nothing important had occurred, as though it would be simple for me to go on, which annoyed me. I reenacted the entire episode to help them remember it, and to make sure everyone else knew exactly what had happened 6 years prior. I then inquired if anyone in the room felt that I could simply let go of this. If I had married someone else, it would have been a different story, but I was marrying the same man with whom my sister had openly flirted when I first brought him home to meet the family. She had shamelessly done it in front of me, treating him as though he were a participant in a tournament that he had never consented to. Above all, she attacked me first after doing all of that, simply because I called her out on her actions and labeled her a loser. I had never had someone attempting to physically harm me in that way before, so it was traumatic for me. Despite everything, she acted as if nothing had happened and never apologized to me in the previous 6 years. I didn't feel obligated to forgive her or move on from the past. I never allowed someone like her back into my life because I felt it was more vital to cling to the past. My parents' assumption that they could simply bring her to my bridal shower and expect us to comply was absurd. Fortunately, my sister realized her mistake and left before my parents could dispute much further. My mother followed her, presumably to appease her, as I assume she wasn't pleased about being misled either. My father stayed with me for a short while, but I informed him that since he had disappointed me, I didn't want to talk to him just now. He became irritated and accused me of being irrational, claiming that I was acting like a brat and that it made no sense to hold on to something that had happened 6 years prior. Although I didn't think I was being a brat, I told him to go since I didn't want to argue with him. He also left after a few minutes. After that, I was so overwhelmed that I had to take a few minutes off to gather myself. Fortunately, my fiancé and maid of honor supported me, and after a little while, I was back to my usual self. Everyone else cooperated, seeing that I needed a diversion and didn't want to think about my sister or dad, and we resumed the celebration as if nothing had happened. After the encounter, my fiancé and I went home, and we didn't discuss the situation further. I was okay with the fact that I hadn't heard from my parents since this incident, which occurred roughly 5 days ago. I felt that we should spend some time apart after what they did. Although I didn't anticipate hearing from them right away, they did, and not to offer an apology, but rather to hold me responsible for my sister's predicament. My mother called me this morning on the phone. As soon as I responded, she instructed me to contact my aunt and ensure that she offered my sister the position she had been discussing. I urged my mother to back up since she seemed agitated and panicked, and I didn't know what she was talking about. She went on to explain that my sister had been out of work for roughly 6 months due to layoffs and downsizing at her prior employer. She had to move back in with our parents a few weeks ago after realizing she could no longer afford the rent. She had been searching for a job, but she had not been able to locate one that she liked or that paid enough. My mother had discussed this with my aunt, who was launching a new company. Because my sister had been working in marketing before, my aunt had first chosen to appoint her as head of marketing. However, my aunt stopped replying and eventually revoked the invitation following the bridal shower episode, in which I told her what had transpired 6 years prior. Since I had always been my aunt's favorite, I didn't find it unexpected, and I believed it to be a plausible explanation when my mother forwarded the message my aunt had sent her to me. My aunt stated in her reply that it was evident my sister had severe anger management problems based on her understanding of the incident I described. My aunt wasn't pleased that she hadn't even offered an apology, not even during the bridal shower. Furthermore, my aunt stated that she had first chosen to hire my sister because she was related, but that she had interviewed a better competent applicant for the job a few weeks prior. She would now offer the position to the more competent applicant since she had changed her mind. That seemed totally reasonable to me, and I was genuinely glad my aunt had a change of heart. I informed my mother that I couldn't do anything about it after reading her message because, as someone who has seen the negative effects of nepotism in the job, I didn't want my aunt to be the type of person who makes things worse. Otherwise, my sister would have been employed because of nepotism. The real reason my sister wasn't hired was that it appeared my aunt had discovered someone more suited for the position. Since this was my aunt's business life and I didn't want to cross any lines, I informed her I wouldn't talk to her. In an attempt to destroy my sister's reputation and image in front of the family, my mother began to lose her head and began screaming at me. Since I hadn't discussed the issue in years, she suggested I didn't need to bring it up during my bridal shower. Even though I had started the argument by calling my sister a loser, especially knowing it would hit her where it hurt, she thought I purposefully painted her as unstable and nasty in order to garner the family's sympathy and make myself appear to be the nice guy. For the record, I wasn't hiding anything when I recounted the incident. I had stated that I had labeled her a loser before to her attack. Even yet, I don't believe that calling her derogatory names excused her physical altercation. It was just unjust for my mother to say that I brought up the incident in order to harm my sister's reputation. I blocked my parents and hung up. After giving it some thought, I'm not sure if discussing the incident was a wise decision. My mother said over the phone that I hadn't given my sister a chance, despite the fact that she had evolved over the years. That was pretty rude of me, she said. I brought up my sister's attack on me 6 years ago, which resulted in her losing a job offer. Am I correct in bringing this up? Update 1. Hi, Reddit. Before I discuss the events that followed my initial post, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone who took the time to leave a remark. I appreciate your nice words and suggestions very much. Well, let's talk about what transpired after I blocked my parents. My parents were unable to reach me because my sister had been barred for the previous 6 years. They chose to come see me as they had no other method to get in touch with me. I truly don't have time to handle all of this because I'm getting married in a few weeks. I already have a lot on my plate. Since I had just returned from work and my fiancé and I needed to travel right away for a last-minute wedding dress fitting, I told them to leave when they arrived. We were going to go, but they had arrived at the wrong time, and I knew that if we opened the door, they would find a way to continue chatting and irritate me. They didn't go even after I threatened to contact the police. To be honest, I didn't want to call the police since I thought it would be excessive. Being the type of person who phones the police for everything was not something I wanted to be. We agreed to let them in, give them a cursory hearing, and then leave after speaking with my fiancé. After making up our minds, we invited them inside, opened the door, and ordered them to hurry up because we had other places to be. Fortunately, my folks didn't mince words. They said that my aunt had withdrawn her offer to hire my sister due to my actions at my bridal shower. They insisted that I talk to my aunt and make sure my sister found employment because, in theory, I was at fault. I didn't want to repeat myself because it was the same argument. I informed them that I couldn't do anything about it because I had already spoken to my mother about it over the phone. They knew I was busy and I'm getting married in a few weeks, so it seemed senseless to come to my place and discuss it again. My sister then cut me off. They came for other reasons, she claimed, besides the job offer. I was taken aback by that as it was our first conversation in 6 years. She went on to tell me that it was really because of her that they were there. She felt compelled to apologize to me. Since I'm still unsure of how I felt at the time, I genuinely don't know what to say to you all. Since I plainly don't trust her, I had serious doubts about her intentions. I chose to be direct with her as a result. I questioned if she truly wanted to apologize or if she was just there to do so because she believed I could help her land the job. I informed her that I couldn't help her, therefore there was no use in wasting her breath if it was only about the job. She appeared a little taken aback by my candor, but she was able to explain that she had come to apologize and that our parents were there to discuss the job. It was obvious they hadn't talked about this because even my parents appeared astonished when I looked at them. My sister, though, seemed unconcerned. She said that she was merely there to apologize and had no interest in the position. Over the previous 6 years, she had given her actions against me a lot of thought, but she had always found a reason not to say sorry. However, she was unable to deny the reality that she had mistreated me after the bridal shower. My fiancé and I were still having a hard time processing everything, but I could tell she was serious based on her tone and conduct. She informed me that she had been resentful of me since she was a child because she felt like she had to compete with me. Since nothing mattered in the real world, she understood that she had wasted her entire youth and adolescence competing with me. She felt bad about it because we could have been friends, especially because I had made multiple attempts to be her buddy. She acknowledged that she had pushed me away because she always thought of me as a rival. I had felt the same way, so hearing her utter all of it was crazy. I'm embarrassed to say that as she related her story, I began to cry. After that, she spoke to my fiancé and expressed regret for the way she had treated him during their one and only encounter. She acknowledged that the apology was long overdue and that she had been so preoccupied with defeating me that she had failed to recognize the type of person she had become. She didn't wait for our response once she was done. She merely stated that we didn't have to pardon her. She only wanted to let it out, and now that she would stop bothering us. My parents, my fiancé and I were the only people left in the room when she left. Since none of us had anticipated it, we were all sitting in awe, trying to comprehend what had just transpired. My fiancé and I went out for my fitting after my parents eventually left without a word. We didn't talk about any of it until we got home. We only began discussing my sister's remarks approximately 30 minutes ago. Even though it took her 6 years, I felt that her apology was extraordinarily mature. She meant every word, based on her actions. My fiancé and I are currently debating whether or not to forgive her. Since we haven't even finished processing it, it's too soon to tell. We're tempted to get in touch with her later and express our forgiveness. I need more time before I can reassure her that everything is fine, even though I've already unblocked her. Even though it took her many years to realize we could have been friends, that is something I'm truly happy about. Update 2. Hello. I just realized that in my previous update, I neglected to express what I intended to do with relation to my parents. To be honest, I forgot about it because I was so preoccupied with my sister's predicament. In any case, my folks haven't gotten in touch with us since our previous visit a few days ago. We're going to keep avoiding them because I don't think they're sorry for anything. The way my sister and I ended up together is one of the many things I hold my parents responsible for. They still had the opportunity to be better parents, but they blew it. They have consistently made it all but impossible for me to maintain them in my life, despite my best efforts. We've fought and argued a lot over the last 6 years, and I've always tried to forgive them, but I'm at a loss now. People who obviously don't care about my feelings, or even my sister's, if I'm being honest, can't continue to be excused. In the end, we won't communicate with them, and I doubt they'll come to my wedding. However, my fiancé and I want to get in touch with them in a few days to inform them that they are no longer invited at the wedding, just to be safe. Update 3. Hello everyone. Last week I got married. Everything was lovely and fantastic, exactly as I had envisioned, and I had a great time. My parents were not present, as was to be expected. My spouse and I didn't even have to make contact with them. They informed me via email that there had been a huge mistake and that they would not be attending. They said my sister and I had begun to demonize them and that they didn't need to be reminded that we blamed them for the tense relationship. They said that, despite their best efforts to be excellent parents to us, they now intend to take some time off and live their separate lives without worrying about their daughters because we don't value their presence in our lives. I mean, if that's what they want, I'm okay with it. Happier news. A few days after I published my most recent update, I contacted my sister. I told her that I would love for her to attend my wedding and that I accepted her apology. It was a very joyful day, and she kindly accepted my invitation and attended the wedding. It's absurd to think that I would have sneered at my parents a few months ago if they had informed me that my sister would attend my wedding instead of them. But now we are here. In any case, I'm glad everything went without a hitch and that I'm at last getting back on track with my sister. This is sufficient for me for the time being, but perhaps my parents will change their minds and apologize to us. Life has never been better, and my husband and I will soon be departing for our honeymoon. I gave my sister-in-law a pregnancy book, unknowingly exposing her affair with my husband's friend. Now the family's in chaos. We know each other since our husbands, Charlie, 26M, sister-in-law Cheryl, 28F, and I, 26F, attended high school together. Charlie and I were in the same year and are sweethearts from high school. We began dating our sophomore year and have been together ever since. With Cheryl, things have always been different. She's always despised me. Hence I would want to say we were high school nemesis as the sentiment was reciprocal. She was a senior 2 years older than us, yet that didn't stop her from being absolutely rude to me. She was a vicious bully in high school, and regrettably, not much has changed since then. Only I could stand up to her back in high school. Everyone else was terrified since Cheryl and her buddies were infamous for mistreating anyone they came across. Some people even moved schools because of their terrible deeds or spreading of tales. They were that horrible. I am not exaggerating. I never feared her, even before Charlie and I began dating. I had always been acquainted with her brother. Cheryl didn't seem like this undefeatable entity to me as he and I had been great friends and I often stayed out at his house. She seemed like any other child. That's how everyone ought to have seen her, in my opinion, but high school can be weird. Still, I wasn't scared of Cheryl. Once I started dating Charlie, I became even more bold. She probably felt powerless over me, even as a senior, and this disturbed her. She once did something truly terrible to me. As usual, one morning upon opening my locker, dead fish and a lot of fish water dropped on me. Head to toe I was covered in nasty, sticky slime. I had to go home since I was so offended, and it was embarrassing and demoralizing. Though I couldn't prove Cheryl was behind it, I felt it had to be her. We had a severe verbal argument in the cafeteria the day before. I labeled her a brain-dead zombie in front of her friends, some of whom even laughed. She did this to me since she couldn't let that go. Charlie felt it had to be his sister too, and their argument turned out really intense. He managed to convince her to back off even though he cannot get her to apologize to me. Though Charlie and I have been together for years, Cheryl and I never spoke once that incident occurred. But once Charlie and I got married last year, my in-laws informed Cheryl and me that since we were now family, we had to try more to get along. Some nosy relatives had been questioning our lack of communication or simply glancing at each other during family events, which embarrassed them. Having gone far from high school, I was ready to let the past pass. I agreed to be polite. Cheryl and I shook hands like grown-ups. Though we chose to be friendly at family functions rather than avoid one another, we were not going to be best friends overnight. Things appeared to be going good a year ago. We would say hi and then go on whenever we ran across each other. We had left the bad blood behind us, so I assumed, but then she became cruel once more. She showed up empty-handed on my birthday some few months earlier, which was okay. She then told me she was actually teaching me cooking classes and emailed me an online program she had bought at the party itself while I was opening everyone's gifts. She said it was meant to be a joke, but nobody else laughed and I didn't either. For background, I had done all the cooking for the day alone, hence it was quite nasty. I have always loved working in the kitchen and experimenting even though I am not a professional chef. Since childhood, cooking has been a pastime of mine. Her comment, she was going to give me cooking lessons, was quite nasty, right after she had eaten a whole dinner I had made. As Charlie had pointed out, everyone knew I produced everything. I took it to heart since I had worked hard and woke up at 6:30 a.m. to make sure everything was perfect. No one truly laughed even once she explained it as a joke. She persisted even though several people laughed merely to let her drop it. She kept insisting she was kidding, but she really thought I should have culinary classes since everything she had eaten that day made her feel sick and she kept saying she might throw up at any time. She also made jokes on how everyone should clear the path to the bathroom should she have to barf. She was truly approaching my last nerve at the end of the evening, and I felt relief when she left. She didn't even bother bidding farewell after spending the whole day cracking jokes at the expense of my cooking abilities, which, by the way, aren't particularly horrible. Charlie and everyone else told me the food was fantastic, hence I have no idea what she was talking about. To be honest, I had begun to believe she might be a decent human being, but after my birthday I chose to resume neglect of her. She obviously still lived in her high school mean girl form, and someone like her had no right to be friendly with me. Cheryl had her birthday last week. She had to invite me even if we are not getting along since I asked her to my party. Charlie traveling without me would have been strange, hence she invited me in order to maintain family peace. That proved to be rather a blunder. I chose to let her taste her own medication. Based on a few weeks old overheard talk, I handed her the book What to Expect When You're Expecting Asterisk. For background, Cheryl came up to our place 3 weeks ago. She insisted on talking to Charlie in private and appeared depressed. She didn't realize I was standing immediately outside listening in on their conversation. I left the room to let them chat in the living room. Though I knew it wasn't moral, I was intrigued and wanted to listen in so Charlie could cover for me when she left. Cheryl was pregnant, per what I understood, but she was truly concerned as she felt unprepared to be pregnant. She had come to consult her brother. Charlie advised her to talk to her spouse even if she felt unprepared. Given that the pregnancy was early, they may discuss ending it should she still feel unprepared. He reasoned that chatting to her husband could allow her to relax and take better control of the circumstances. Cheryl left after briefly consoling her. I told Charlie what I had overheard as she left. We both agreed she had been behaving oddly. She appeared strange coming to us instead of her husband even if she wasn't ready for a baby. She said some things that nearly sounded like she needed Charlie's assistance in covertly ending the pregnancy, but he wasn't ready to engage in such dishonest behavior. He thought her husband ought to know before any decisions were taken. Though ultimately the woman's decision is hers, we felt her spouse at least deserved to be included in the conversation given she was married. We had not heard anything else regarding her pregnancy since that day. Still, I decided to pull a small practical joke on her and handed her that book. Fortunately, she did not unwrap the gifts in front of every visitor at the party, yet it made no difference since the book truly got her into trouble. Her husband might thus eventually find himself leaving her. She called me in tears the day after her birthday, stating I had destroyed her life and charged me with purposefully undermining her marriage. What she was talking about eluded me. She was so enraged and was screaming at me, so I couldn't even get her to clarify what was happening. She hung up silently, done. without further word. Following that phone chat, my in-laws got in touch and reported exactly what had happened. She apparently had been unwrapping all of her gifts with her husband, and then that book surfaced. I had even left a note stating that Charlie and I wished to congratulate her and affixed it to the book. She hadn't told anyone yet about the pregnancy, but I wanted to play about with her the way she had done on my birthday. I had no clue it would have such dire results. She could not have become pregnant by her spouse since he was sterile. This was unknown to her. She apparently may have been cheating now, and her spouse had already shown suspicion. That book served to validate his misgivings. Though none of the family members know for sure whether she had been cheating or not, let's be honest, she most certainly wasn't biologically incapable of having children. In any case, that is not my line of work. All I know is she had come to Charlie thinking he would assist her covertly in ending the pregnancy. Now we know why she wanted to keep it a secret and why she was so queasy when she spoke with him. She cannot let that happen if she wanted to end the pregnancy without her husband knowing, since she is a homemaker and everything she spends might be followed by him. Even pulling money would be suspect, as it would be a large sum that would beg problems. Cheryl made a great effort to persuade her husband that I was merely teasing and that nothing was happening. He disagreed when she claimed the book was only a hoax. Unless there was some truth to it, he doubted Charlie and I would pull such a joke. He then requested Cheryl to leave, and today she lives with her parents. My in-laws asked me to talk to her husband and persuade him that I had only handed her the book to play about with. Given his suspicions of her adultery, they believed I might get him to approach her and fix things. Her fidelity now begged additional questions. I disagree, since they think I should not have done what I did and that I'm at blame. For the past week, my in-laws and I have been at conflict. Given her behavior at my birthday celebration, I believe I was justified in what I did. I don't think I should accept the fall for this, as I had no idea it would cause so much trouble. She most certainly should have been faithful to her husband if she wanted peace in her marriage. To hold me responsible for it is unfair. Charlie has the same sentiment. Though he believes the present was a little excessive given the events of my birthday celebration, he does not advise me to apologize to Cheryl or even talk to her husband about any of this. Saying we should resolve things since her marriage is in jeopardy, my in-laws keep fighting with us. They believe that should we fail to persuade her spouse that this was only a joke, the family may suffer from divorce. She most certainly was cheating, though, if she was pregnant when she spoke with Charlie and her husband is sterile. Should that be the case, we want no involvement whatsoever or defense of her. Apart from that, the book was only vengeance for the jokes she cracked at my birthday. I had no clue it would result in anything like this. I have nothing to be guilty over. It is not like I did it on intention. Still, they all seem to be behaving as though I am the villain, the mastermind behind a sinister scheme meant to wipe her off target or otherwise. It's very strange. Suddenly I'm questioning my choices. AITA kindly sent a pregnancy book as a birthday present to my sister-in-law. Update 1, Hi. So it's been 2 weeks since I handed Cheryl that book, and up until now we have avoided talking to her husband. From what we know, she had been cheating on her husband with another man, hence going forward we will also keep to that. Though I'm not sure specifically, I believe it's someone from high school. Worse, I believe it's someone from Charlie's acquaintance group, since a few days ago we spoke, more of an argument, on the phone with Cheryl. She stated it was quite unjust that she was being held accountable for all of this, but Charlie's friend was equally culpable. However, he wasn't getting any criticism and was even unwilling to defend her. Though we don't know exactly who she's referring to, Charlie has quite a few married pals from high school. That's not really our main concern. Managing my in-laws has proved somewhat challenging. I don't believe they have done it yet. They insist I should chat to her spouse before he files for divorce. He keeps telling he'll do it, but if he truly wants to split, he should have done it now. What he is waiting for is unknown to me. Anyway, they believe they still have time and that, if I only talk to him, I could be able to persuade him not to leave her by stating I was only doing a practical joke. I have nothing to do with all of this drama, hence I refuse to allow myself to get caught in it. Though they have been making it somewhat challenging for us, I simply want to back off and relax. Thus, yesterday we had to make a really difficult choice and ultimately block all three of them since they were slightly disturbing us. We can't keep talking to them, trying to help them to grasp where we are coming from. Over 2 weeks have passed. She was truly a bully to me in high school, yet many of the people in the comments on my first post felt it was unacceptable of me to do what I did. She had been cheating, hence I doubt I have to feel guilty about what I did. Still, folks are free to disagree with me in this free nation. Update 2. Hi. 3 days have passed since our last report and at last we were able to identify the person she had been having the affair with. Charlie's friend she mentioned turned out to be among his closest pals. This surprised me somewhat a bit. Because his family was acting somewhat irrationally, Charlie had been complaining to his pals about how challenging things had been for him the past 2 weeks. I suppose his pal chose to come clean as he couldn't tolerate it anymore. He called Charlie and told him he had been seeing Cheryl in an affair. Apparently, all of this began roughly 1 year ago, just around our wedding's time. For us, it was really startling and we are still trying to understand it. Charlie is quite close to every one of his buddies, hence we never expected a betrayal like this. From what we have seen, this guy, who has been married for 3 years, and his wife seem to be truly in love. I personally know the woman. She talks endlessly about her husband. Right now, I just feel somewhat sorry for her. We decided straight away to cut him off, and right now we are not telling anyone since we do not want to discredit him. But we will most certainly not be entertaining this going forward. We even told him to tell his wife straightforward since she is the one who really needs to know the truth. Nobody should ever have to go through what this is like. He also supplied us with evidence of Cheryl cheating on her spouse alongside him. We have come to the conclusion that, at least nothing good would come of it if we allowed ourselves to be pulled into this play. Hence, our last call is keeping them blocked. To what we know, they have not discussed this with anyone else. Everyone still believes we get along well with my in-laws and that Charlie's relatives know nothing about the turmoil underway behind the scene. Given the circumstances, which would be somewhat embarrassing for the family, I'm betting they are keeping things under wraps in order to protect their name. Though I suppose it's a surface motivation, I value their great concern for their perceived image. We don't want to deal with other people right now and it's helping us keep everything secret. As it is, we have sufficient on our plates. Charlie's cousin is getting married in a few weeks, hence they will have to go to that wedding. We're not sure whether my in-laws or Cheryl will be there given the present circumstances, but if they decide to go, boy, that will be quite strange for everyone concerned. Update 3. Hey, practically 2 months after my last update is here. Not truly intriguing events occurred in these previous 2 months. We sort of forgot about my in-laws once we cut them off. Their end also lacked news, hence they did not try to get in touch with us. We thought perhaps Cheryl and her husband had been able to sort things out as neither a pregnancy announcement nor a divorce announcement was made. Good for them, then I suppose. Charlie and I know that adultery never stays secret, thus we really don't care about what's happening in their marriage. When her husband finds out the truth, she will most certainly receive what she deserves. Regarding the pregnancy, I suppose she stopped it some way. In any case, we didn't bother ourselves with it and kept to our own business as whatever happened is not of importance to us. That was till we visited his family at his cousin's wedding some few days ago. Including Cheryl's spouse and my in-laws, all of them were present. Once we arrived, we acted as though the others did not exist and neglected even greeting each other. Clearly, the rest of the family noticed it right away. People began posing all kinds of inquiries to us. Though they attempted to be subdued about it, we knew they were gathering gossip. But we simply tried to keep to ourselves so nobody would disturb us. We did not entertain anyone. Cheryl, on the other hand, followed a different strategy. She chose to blab her mouth off even though we knew the facts. We were ready to put up with her since we were 3 days at the hotel and it was just a matter of time till we returned home. But she began to say such terrible things about us that we had to confront her about it. Sadly, that resulted in a somewhat public confrontation between our families during the rehearsal dinner. It was someone else's wedding, hence I regret it as Charlie and his cousin got along well. Now one of the events was totally destroyed thanks to us. Naturally, following such a spectacle, we had to leave before the wedding even started since we couldn't stay much longer. We have since apologized multiple times to his cousin. She has indicated she is cool with it, but we still feel quite horrible about what happened. Cheryl and my in-laws, on the other hand, were really in charge of generating all of this turmoil, yet they hardly bothered to apologize to Charlie's cousin. At least we departed of our own will. The other family members practically urged them to go after we departed. Serves them right, they were due this kind of shame. It was pretty fulfilling for both of us when Charlie's cousin told him about it the day before her wedding as we were phoning her apologies. Cheryl had been telling all the family, and everyone who would listen that we had tried to destroy her marriage by lying about her adultery, therefore leading us to a fight in the first place. She said we failed in trying to undermine her marriage. Clearly, that was untrue since, as we indicated, her marriage life is not something we give much thought to. Choosing to live with a lady like her husband had shown how dumb he was. We were even ready to let that slip since we were attending someone else's wedding and we wanted to avoid starting a scene. She then began asserting, though, that we were the ones having an open marriage and that I wanted to get close to her husband, which explained why I'd always been so envious of her. We couldn't live with that. We resolved to face her then. I mentioned all the evidence, the screenshots we had gotten from Charlie's friend, which I had been saving to myself for so long on the evening of the rehearsal dinner. Charlie and I now felt, nonetheless, that it was at last time to defend ourselves. She could not simply say anything she pleased and get away with it. Her husband can no longer ignore reality since he at last knows it. His call is whether or not he takes the correct decision for himself and leaves her. At least now there will be no more questioning of us. At least we left on our own with courtesy, avoiding being thrown out as others were. Though we are now attempting to move over it, it was just a really awful few days. The whole family knows Cheryl's type of person she is, thus I just feel sympathy for her husband as he decided to mend things with her even though it was useless. I truly hope he gets the bravery to escape. Should he decide to remain with her, then he just has absolutely no decency or self-respect. We eventually decided to go ahead and sabotage her marriage as she had been accusing us of for so long. She will now have to pay for trying to bully us. How she planned to get away with all of this is unknown. Since high school, Charlie and I have literally been standing up to Mom. I believe we have made it really evident that we are not scared of her. We were not thus going to back down either right now. She ought to have known that. Update 4. Consequently, it is happening. 2 weeks have passed since our return from Charlie's cousin's wedding, and today I at last heard from a couple of cousins Cheryl wrote about her and her husband divorcing. She said that it was a mutual decision to split ways and urged everyone to honor their privacy during this trying period. What a weight of lies this baggage carries. She's behaving as people weren't present at the wedding and like her entire family isn't aware of what actually happened and the real reason they're divorcing, hence I'm not sure why she's acting like we all already know, hence we will definitely be honoring her privacy. No one has to ask her what happened. The talk began when Charlie told some of his pals, thus even her friends have learned about it. We regret nothing about what we did. She had been spewing so much garbage about us in the past that we hardly need to feel guilty about what we did or regret her. Should she go low, we will go lower as well. Period is. She has always been a bully, thus we believe we did the correct thing as someone needed her down a peg. We are happy to be the ones doing that. If that makes some people view us as the bad guys, that is okay with us. For example, my in-laws have chosen to totally cut us off from their life. They even had their attorney get in touch with Charlie to let him know they had opted to avoid us and most likely would cut us off from the inheritance as well. As like we were going to learn that and start begging for pardon right away. That is not going to transpire. We are not money-based sellouts that one could purchase. Besides, since Cheryl hasn't worked since she graduated and has been depending on either her parents or her husband, they should most likely retain all their money to themselves, presumably for the rest of their lifetime. Thus, yes, they may keep their money and Cheryl with herself by all means. We behaved what we believe to be right. We are not going to act as though we are sorry for it. Right now, Charlie and I are quite happy with our life. We have no interest in anyone else. After 10 years together, I'm ending my relationship with the woman I love because she wants kids and I don't. Am I the asshole? Original post, I, 31M, have known her, 29F, since we were teenagers? We got together 10 years ago, and have been living together for a bit over 7. It's been the perfect relationship in pretty much every way. We support each other through everything, we have fun together, she's my best friend and I'm hers. We're as intensely in love as we've ever been. We've discussed marriage a bunch through the years. As of a few years ago it wasn't either of us cup of tea, but more recently she has expressed an interest in tying the knot. I don't really have an interest in marriage as a concept, but as I was intent on spending my life with her either way, if she needed a ring and a wedding I was more than willing to accommodate her. As of around half a year ago, I was in the planning stages of a proposal, and had even started to look for a ring. I didn't spoil the eventual surprise, but based on our conversations on the matter I don't think it would have been very unexpected to her if I'd popped the question. If anything, she must be wondering what's taking so long, at this point. But our desires for the future have diverged in another way, that I can't just compromise over. She wants to be a mother, and I don't want to be a father. Much like marriage, for much of our relationship she didn't have such a desire, but now she does. Unlike marriage, however, parenting is not just a symbolic thing I can accommodate her on. She didn't pressure me to change my mind, but she has tried to gauge whether there was wiggle room on my end, whether I could see my opinion on the matter change. I can't. At this point, she has accepted that. I could pop into a jewelry store tomorrow, pick out a ring, propose to her at the next opportunity. She would say yes and a while later we'd be married, still on our way to spending our lives together. Even though she knows we will not have children together. She may still hold out hope I'll change my mind. I can't know for certain either way, of course. I'd get to be with her probably forever, which is really all I want. But, she wants to be a mother. Not only has she expressed it to me, It has been painfully obvious in the way she is around our friends and relatives' babies and children, or in the way she awkwardly brushes off her mother's comments about waiting for grandchildren. It really is plain to see. I couldn't miss it if I tried, and, trust me, for a while I did. So I have to let her go. Or, since she has not exactly been trying to leave me, I guess a more accurate way to phrase it is that I have to push her away. I have considered the other options. There's the selfish option, which really just involves staying with her, never giving her a child. I wouldn't even have to coerce her into this or lie about my stance on the subject, but every parent I've asked has gushed about parenting being the most fulfilling experience they've gone through. And for some of them I saw firsthand the exact same tells that they wanted to start a family that I now see with my girlfriend. I can't be the person taking that away from her. There's also a part of me that just fears she'd resent and leave me later on. Then there's the option of committing to eventually become a father, for her. Maybe someday I'd even be thankful I did it. For me, after all, some of the parents I've polled also said they weren't always keen to have children. Some still had doubts even while expecting, and yet it still ended up being that wonderful, fulfilling experience they all described. But even as I type this, even as I try to convince myself I actually believe this, I just don't. And while I've asked for happy parents and healthy family units, there are also plenty of unhappy ones, or just shit ones, in this world. I think the least that every child deserves is to be wanted by both of their parents, and I can't see myself go through with this if there's even a chance that I won't meet even that very low bar. Even less so since I believe that chance to be quite high. I've pondered variations of those two main ones too. Waiting it out and hoping she changes her mind. Maybe being an aunt or a godmother, both are likely to happen within the next couple years, in the future can be enough, but they all seem like rolls of the dice, whose results will only be known years from now. When she expressed the desire to start a family, it was as a plan for a few years into the future. If that is to happen, without me, then I need to do this now. I've already procrastinated, simply pausing my plans for a proposal when I first realized how much she really wanted this, hoping a better answer would magically appear before me. But I can't just kick this can down the road forever. I've set the date, which is tomorrow. I will tell her I want to separate. I will tell her why as I have here. I have prepared myself in case she pushes back, tells me she doesn't want this, believes me to be lying about my reasons, pleads me to reconsider. I think my resolve is strong enough to hold no matter what she throws at me. I expect this to be a shock to her. As I said, she's likely to expect me to pop the question rather than to end things. I know I'm going to break her heart and I fucking hate myself for it. I'm also going to break mine, but I guess that's on me. I've already made plans for the aftermath. I know where I'll be staying for a short while after this, so I'll be out of her hair. I've laid out some options for longer-term living arrangements. I already know that everyone around us, my own family included, is gonna think I'm either an asshole or a complete moron. I doubt I'll get much in the way of empathy, but I also won't be looking for it. Can't plan for everything though. Figuring out how to live without her gonna be a bitch. Full transparency, I started writing this hoping I'd talk myself out of pulling that trigger. Hoping that typing it all out would reveal the magical answer I've been hoping for. But it hasn't. If anything, it has reinforced what I already knew. Edit. Some of you are pointing out that I'm taking a choice out of her hands when it should be her decision, or at least a joint one. I actually agree. But for months now I haven't been able to shake off the feeling that leaving that choice to her is in some ways cruel. Can you imagine leaving the one you love, shattering their heart? So you can then seek something they couldn't give you elsewhere. The only reason I can make that decision is because yes, I'll be hurting her, but in the hope that she gets something she wants, that I can't give her, out of it. If the roles were reversed I could never leave her for my own benefit. I know it's still unfair for me to just take away her agency in this. I feel shit about it. I feel shit about a ton of things right now. I'll feel even worse tomorrow. But I don't know what else I can do that doesn't force an impossible choice on her. Edit 2. So this got a wide range of responses. Some of you agree. Some of you think I should be more nuanced in my approach. Some are being really weird and trying to shove sexism into this, or making up fanfiction that twists this into me just looking for an excuse to break up with her. Some also are saying I should just force myself to have children, which I feel are the most bonkers takes. Lots of you are also saying I need a vasectomy. And yes, that is something I plan to do. Among the criticisms saying I shouldn't just make that decision, a lot of you are saying I need to clarify to her how certain I am that I don't want children. I did mention that, maybe I didn't make it clear enough, but that has already happened. She has talked to me about it, about whether there was any chance I'd change my mind. I have been as clear as I could have been that there was not. And she has accepted it and made her choice to stay with me despite that. These are things that have already happened. But despite making that choice, it has been clear, painfully so, that she still does want children. That is why I'm taking the decision out of her hands. Maybe I'm as dumb or as big an asshole as some of you are saying. Maybe I'm gonna ruin both our lives for no good reason. But there is no point at this stage in restating my stance and pawning the choice off on her again. I think the choice she made will make her unhappy in the long term, and I think I have to do what I'm going to do. There's nothing else to it. P.S. Do not expect or await any further update. Edit 3. In my second and last edit to the original post, I told people not to expect an update. Frankly, I didn't think I'd want to write one, nor did I really think I'd have anything much to say. Things didn't exactly work out how I thought and said they would, so here I am. I did approach her last Saturday. I expressed what had been troubling me and explained to her why I thought we should go our separate ways. As I thought it would, it came as a shock to her. She told me that while she had been wanting to start a family with me, she thought she'd made it clear that she'd chosen me over that prospect, fully aware it would not happen. She emphasized that the with me part was essential to her, that she couldn't picture it any other way. I told her that I was aware of the choice she'd made, but that I did not want to be the reason she'd miss out on being a parent. That while I'm sure she didn't make that call lightly, that I can tell she still wishes to have children. She did confirm that wasn't a desire that had just disappeared, that it was still there, and that while that's true, I can only see her choice to stay with me leading to regret and resentment for her. I'm not going to retell the whole discussion, those are the very rough broad strokes of both of our core positions, but it lasted hours, went through a range of arguments and emotions, cries on both sides, anger and distrust that I was being honest about my reasons on hers. I'd written in the original post that I thought I had the resolve to end things with her no matter what. As it turned out, maybe it came from a lack of resolve, or maybe she just got through to me and it would have just been stubbornness not to listen. But at the end of it, we agreed on just taking time apart from one another for the foreseeable future. On her part, she promised me she would truly take that time to think about all of it, to re-examine her feelings in depth. On mine, I committed to accepting her choice. The argument that convinced me was that this would be the first time in over a decade, the first time since we properly became adults, that we wouldn't be in each other's life, and that if the gain of perspective from being apart didn't change her mind, that had to mean something. Trying to see things rationally, I think the reasoning is sound. On a more emotional level, I cannot say I'm 100% certain I'm not just convincing myself of that, but overall I do think it's the way to go. The fact that, at this point, I don't know what she'll decide is one thing that makes me believe this was right. It also scares the shit out of me because, one of the two options is that I lose her. Might be dumb since I was ready to end it, but thinking about that prospect did and still does wreck me. Based on the responses I got last time, I'd wager many of you will think I was wrong to agree to this. Others advised exactly this, so maybe they'll be happy. Others, I'm sure, will still think I'm an asshole. Hopefully, this will turn out to be the right choice, whatever her decision ends up being. We have not set an exact time frame. I've asked that she take at least a few months, as that sounds like a good minimum, and more importantly that she takes as long as she needs. We, obviously, won't be living together anymore. I'm currently staying at a hotel, but, her decision, she will soon, a matter of days, move out of our apartment, at which point I'll move back in. From that point on, we will have no contact with one another at all, except for very strict exceptions which will hopefully not arise, emergencies, personal tragedies. And that's pretty much it. I miss her already. The next while is gonna suck. The aftermath may also suck, but then again this doesn't suck any worse than I was expecting the aftermath of the definitive breakup I thought would happen would suck. I don't want to promise an update that will tell you how it all ends. That is months away, and I don't know that I'll be in a sharing mood. And that's even if this ends with good news. Sorry for that. Hopefully I will though. Update 1. In my second and last edit to the original post, I told people not to expect an update. Frankly, I didn't think I'd want to write one, nor did I really think I'd have anything much to say. Things didn't exactly work out how I thought and said they would, so here I am. I did approach her last Saturday. I expressed what had been troubling me, and explained to her why I thought we should go our separate ways. As I thought it would, it came as a shock to her. She told me that while she had been wanting to start a family with me, she thought she'd made it clear that she'd chosen me over that prospect, fully aware it would not happen. She emphasized that the with me part was essential to her, that she couldn't picture it any other way. I told her that I was aware of the choice she'd made, but that I did not want to be the reason she'd miss out on being a parent. That while I'm sure she didn't make that call lightly, that I can tell she still wishes to have children, she did confirm that wasn't a desire that had just disappeared, that it was still there. And that while that's true, I can only see her choice to stay with me leading to regret and resentment for her. I'm not gonna retell the whole discussion. Those are the very rough broad strokes of both of our core positions, but it lasted hours, went through a range of arguments and emotions, cries on both sides, anger and distrust that I was being honest about my reasons on hers. I'd written in the original post that I thought I had the resolve to end things with her no matter what. As it turned out, maybe it came from a lack of resolve, or maybe she just got through to me and it would have just been stubbornness not to listen. But at the end of it, we agreed on just taking time apart from one another for the foreseeable future. On her part, she promised me she would truly take that time to think about all of it, to re-examine her feelings in depth. On mine, I committed to accepting her choice. The argument that convinced me was that this would be the first time in over a decade, the first time since we properly became adults, that we wouldn't be in each other's life, and that if the gain of perspective from being apart didn't change her mind, that had to mean something. Trying to see things rationally, I think the reasoning is sound. On a more emotional level, I cannot say I'm 100% certain I'm not just convincing myself of that, but overall I do think it's the way to go. The fact that, at this point, I don't know what she'll decide is one thing that makes me believe this was right. It also scares the shit out of me because, one of the two options is that I lose her. Might be dumb since I was ready to end it, but thinking about that prospect did and still does wreck me. Based on the responses I got last time, I'd wager many of you will think I was wrong to agree to this. Others advised exactly this, so maybe they'll be happy. Others, I'm sure, will still think I'm an asshole. Hopefully, this will turn out to be the right choice, whatever her decision ends up being. We have not set an exact time frame. I've asked that she take at least a few months, as that sounds like a good minimum, and more importantly that she takes as long as she needs. We, obviously, won't be living together anymore. I'm currently staying at a hotel, but, her decision, she will soon, a matter of days, move out of our apartment, at which point I'll move back in. From that point on, we will have no contact with one another at all, except for very strict exceptions which will hopefully not arise, emergencies, personal tragedies. And that's pretty much it. I miss her already. The next while is gonna suck. The aftermath may also suck. But then again, this doesn't suck any worse than I was expecting the aftermath of the definitive breakup I thought would happen would suck. I don't want to promise an update that will tell you how it all ends. That is months away, and I don't know that I'll be in a sharing mood. And that's even if this ends with good news. Sorry for that. Hopefully I will though. Update 2. So, I'm not quite sure how many people remember and/or care about my original posts. They're still up on my profile if you need a refresher. But either way, here it comes. First off, I did break our no contact policy once. A couple of weeks in, I reached out to let her know about my intent to get a vasectomy, which happened a few weeks after that. It was a short conversation. She told me she did expect I might want to do that. We both confessed to missing the other, and that's pretty much it. I hadn't told her before our break because I'm skittish about medical procedures and was still reading up on and talking myself into it, and I didn't wait till after, because I felt that was information that could help her reflection, and also didn't like the idea of either delaying the procedure for an unknown amount of time or going through with it behind her back, if that makes sense. Now, on to the conclusion to all of this. I won't keep you in suspense any longer. My partner and I are back together and have been for some weeks. Aside from my transgression, we had no contact with one another for the duration of the outbreak, until she reached out to me saying she had made her decision and asking if we could meet later that day, at our place. Technically just mine at that point, but you get it. Once she got there, she talked me through what she'd been doing during our time apart. She explained that at first she needed some time adjusting to life without me, not just in the sense of missing me as a person but also of not having a partner for the first time in a decade. Our experiences in that regard were rather similar. I guess we'd both grown to be somewhat codependent. Once she was past that, she started exploring her feelings on parenthood. One thing she did was talk about it with friends and relatives, both with parents, future parents as well as child-free couples, talking about their experience, about how they came to end up where they did. She also made a point to spend time with children, babysitting for friends semi-regularly and stuff like that. There was also a lot of pure introspection, thinking about her feelings as well as our relationship. She told me that while she does love being around children, she can confidently say that she doesn't need children of her own, and that she would rather be with the right person. Lucky for me, she still thinks I'm that person. While we both had to shed a bit of our codependency, the yearning and love for one another didn't go away or dim for either of us. Back to her thoughts on children and not having them, she said that she'd still have children in her life. Her brother and his wife are planning to start a family soon. My own sister, who is on good terms with my partner, already has one. and that would be enough to fulfill that part of her. She said she was sure and asked if I was going to be able to accept her decision. I said yes and thanked her for respecting my own decision not to have children and still wanting to be with me. We also talked about how worthwhile each of us felt this time apart had been. She said that while it ultimately didn't change her mind, it reinforced it, and she said that she could understand why I needed that added certainty. She did add that she wished I'd been more open to her about this whole thing before I'd essentially convinced myself to end things with her, that she felt communication had before been a strong point of our relationship and that it did hurt to be blindsided. I committed to doing better in the future should any such circumstances arise. And that's kind of it. We've fallen back into our relationship dynamic pretty seamlessly. She's back living with me in our apartment. We've been making up for lost time, catching up on what the other had been up to, and made a point to have what I'd call an above-average amount of romantic evenings and such since we got back together. Really though, the romance is nice, just being with her again has been bliss. Her 30th birthday is coming up over the summer and we've made plans for a 2-week getaway somewhere sunny to celebrate, just the two of us. We will also have a thing with friends and family once we're back, but we'll be away for the day proper. Not our first time vacationing together of course, but kinda pulling out all the stops on this one. I'm also considering maybe popping the question then, but I first want to sound out that it is still what she wants. Hopefully I don't completely ruin the surprise trying to figure that out. I'd like to thank those who left comments or reached out in DMs, whether they were messages of support, advice or criticism. I was not in the ideal mindset to accept feedback after my initial submission, but I did find worth in a lot of what I dismissed at the time, rereading those threads, the ones I made but also on another sub they were reposted to, during the past months. This will hopefully be the last update, but I'll try to answer a few comments. My fiancé proposed while I was on the toilet, and my friends called it weird. Now I'm questioning if our sweet engagement story was really awkward. Original post. It's not as bad as it sounds. My friends are just obsessed with that part. I think. Fake names. My 32F fiancé Peter, 30M, had arranged a candlelight dinner in a hotel room. There were flowers, rose petals, and music. There was my favorite dinner and my favorite dessert. Peter was in a tuxedo. I was wearing a dress. That evening was so amazing. While I was eating, my IBS started acting up. I ran to the bathroom. It was mortifying, but at least I was comfortable enough with Peter to allow him to come in. I was apologizing for ruining our evening while I was on the toilet, and he said it's okay. I felt like he wanted to ask me to marry him the whole evening. I told him I love him, and he said I love you too. I told him, I'm sure you'll take care of me in sickness and in health. That comment made Peter smile and he got down on one knee. I didn't care that this was the situation. I was so happy to say yes. I felt like he wouldn't have asked that evening if I didn't say the sickness and health comment. I told my best friend Kate, 33F, and another friend Bailey, 33F. I told them the truth. Kate said it's weird, creepy, and an asshole move on his part. I explained that he likely would have put it off if I didn't mean the health comment. Kate said I was desperate, and that I should have some respect for myself. Bailey said, if I thought Peter would ask another time, then I should have let him ask another time. Before talking to them, I thought I had the sweetest proposal story. Now I feel like an asshole who caused my amazing fiancé to have a terrible story. Am I the asshole? Update and further context. The proposal happened on Saturday, and I had been holding off telling my parents and Peter's parents. Both sets of parents live in a different state. Tonight, we told my parents first via video chat. My parents are Bob, 58M, and Susan, 58F. My mom is a massive fan of romance, and I knew she would ask about the proposal. Peter and I told my parents the whole proposal story. My mom was over the moon. She said proposing like that is better than any idea she had. My dad said it just proves the love Peter has for me. My mom asked if she could tell others, and I said sure. I had asked my mom to be my maid of honor. After getting engaged, my pick for maid of honor was either going to be Kate or my mom. I didn't pick my mom to spite Kate. I'm not punishing Kate. Kate's initial reaction to the proposal story would just make her being the maid of honor awkward. Plus my mom is so happy with our union, and she would love to plan a wedding. Then we told Peter's parents via video chat. His parents are Chuck, 55M, and Linda, 59F. His parents really appreciated the comedy. Chuck thanked us for giving them the gift of telling that amazing story, if we're comfortable with that. I told him we're confused. Linda said she's so happy for us. Peter told his father that he wants him to be the best man. Lastly, we told Peter's sister Juliana, 27F, via video chat as she lives in another state. She had her father's sense of humor. I hope Kate and Bailey will be bridesmaids. Yes, Kate and Bailey are single. I have been best friends with Kate since the 9th grade, so this little disagreement wouldn't ruin our friendship. Further update. Kate and Bailey both agreed to be bridesmaids when I asked via message. Kate apologized via message, and she also sent me a video of her apologizing. Kate said she appreciates that I'm still letting her be a key part of the wedding. She said that after several days of thinking about the proposal, she realizes how loving it was. She said if she had IBS, she would appreciate a guy who treats her like how Peter treats me. Bailey apologized via message. Her apology was brief, and she admitted in it that Kate told her to apologize. Update. Thank you to all the amazing people who gave me support on my original post. After Kate's apology message and apology video, I messaged back that I forgave her with a link to my original post. She said she really wanted to talk face to face. We went to the gym today even though I was feeling like I was going to get an IBS flare-up. We talked while we worked out. Kate said that she was upset when she heard my proposal story, and that she didn't understand why she was so upset at the time. She confessed that when she had processed her feelings, she realized it was intense jealousy. Kate revealed to me, for the first time, that she was diagnosed with IBS a few months ago. She said hers is not as severe as mine. She said this has been a scary time for her, especially since she has watched me suffer so much from it all these years. Kate said she would want that proposal for herself. She said she wishes she could be that comfortable with a man. She said the comments on my original post made her feel hopeful. She said looking up on IBS more online has made her feel hopeful as well. Kate had explicitly asked me to make this upset post. She apologized again. She said she's glad that my mom is the maid of honor instead of her. She said she's happy for me but also very jealous. Kate says that despite the fact Bailey had sent an apology message too, Bailey still feels awkward talking to me. Kate said that Bailey will come around, that Bailey is just too embarrassed right now after how she acted. I asked Kate if she looked up how common IBS is and she said she looked that up after seeing the comments in my original post. She said she was shocked by how common it is. She said she was avoiding learning about it as she was scared of what she might find. I made sure to tell her that a guy has never dumped me over my IBS. She knows that I had messed around with an embarrassing amount of guys before meeting Peter. I told Kate the reason those hookups never progressed to anything real was because I was too ashamed to let a guy see the IBS part of my life. I told Kate that the person who told me I was ugly and nasty more than anyone was myself. Kate said she hasn't mentally adjusted to this yet but she thinks she can. I told her she's my best friend, I love her, and that I will help her through this. I made a joke about poopy girls having to stick together. That made her smile. After the gym, I rushed home to the toilet to deal with the IBS flare-up I felt coming. To no one's surprise, Peter took care of me when he came home from work. He even helped me to take a bath as I was experiencing so much discomfort. I want everyone to know, Kate has been an amazing friend to me. The disagreement that was at the center of my original post was extremely out of character for her. I had made that post asking if I was wrong because Kate has always been very reasonable. Even with IBS, I'm happy. I have amazing friends, an amazing family, and obviously an amazing fiancé. So if you don't hear much from me on Reddit, don't worry. I'm probably just living an amazing life, even when I'm stuck on the toilet. Update 2. Right now, I'm suffering from one of the worst IBS flare-ups of my life. Plus I have one whopper of a cold. But I have good news. Both Kate and Bailey visited me. Bailey now knows about Kate's IBS from Kate. I was so sick I was laying in bed when my friends visited. Peter was there to help me, of course. Bailey actually cried as she gave her first face-to-face apology for her reaction to my proposal story. She apologized to both Peter and I. She even hugged me despite the fact that I have a cold. Peter and I both accepted Bailey's apology. I told Bailey that she doesn't have to be embarrassed to talk to me. My friends and I talked for a little while before I needed to go to the bathroom. They wished me well before leaving. Peter took care of me, of course. I'm glad that I'm on good terms with both of my closest friends. OOP posted to AMA, I am an IBS girl and I'm getting married to a man who accepts me. AMA, September 25, 2024. I'm a 32-year-old with horrible IBS. I'm getting married to a 30-year-old man who loves me in sickness and in health. My fiancé is the sweetest, as he didn't let my sickness ruin his proposal. I had to rush to the bathroom during our dinner in our hotel room, and he asked me to marry him while I was on the toilet. He probably would have done it another time, but I made hints that I knew he wanted to propose. I'm incredibly happy. At this very moment, I'm suffering from both an IBS flare-up and a cold, so I have time for a Q&A. Ask me anything. Proposed to my girlfriend of 4 years, she said no because it wasn't a surprise. Now I'm wondering if we're on the same page about marriage. Original post. I'll start by saying I love my girlfriend a lot, but she is definitely high maintenance. We've been talking about getting married for a couple of years now, but I wanted to wait until I knew a wedding was something we could afford. I finally got a promotion and she found stable employment, so I went out and bought a ring. We went on a vacation last week. The whole trip was very romantic, and I proposed to her on the beach, which I thought she would have wanted. Turns out she expected it all along because the trip was so romantic and she said no. She wants me to try again, but wants it to be a surprise this time. She also wants a photographer to be there to capture the moment. It was pretty fucking embarrassing when a few people came up to us to congratulate us and she was explaining why she said no. I'm not sure what to do. She wanted it to be a surprise but also wanted me to propose as soon as I felt ready to. We also talked about her ideal engagement, and it's on a beach, yes, seriously. In a forest or in a field. I can't imagine any possible scenario where I could surprise her at one of those locations. She is not the outdoorsy type, so it'd be unlikely she would be in any of those locations anyways. I explained my frustration to her and she just said, well, if you want to get married you will find a way to make it work. It seems so bratty and immature, and I'm not sure how to deal with her now. I'm still really pissed off about it. What should I do about this? Am I wrong to be pissed off? TL.er. Proposed to my girlfriend, but she said no because it wasn't a surprise and there wasn't a photographer there to capture the moment. Only wants to get engaged if the proposal fits a very specific image she has. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Your girlfriend doesn't sound nearly mature enough to get married. Take this as a sign of your life to come and get out. OOP. I think you're right. I had been trying to justify it for her, but judging by the overwhelming response I should probably break it off. Comment 2. Ask your good friends their truthful opinion on her, and make sure to let them know that they won't get a backlash for saying something bad. They know better than us. OOP. My friends can't stand her. Comment 3. Take the ring back to the jeweler. Does she want an engagement or does she want a marriage? I can totally see bridezilla growing on her already. Yikes. OOP. Yeah, that's another thing. When we were talking about her dream proposal, she was showing me her Pinterest for her dream wedding, and it's full of stuff we won't ever be able to afford. I told her it's unlikely our wedding would be like that, but we could still make it nice, and she said she'd rather wait till we can afford her dream wedding. Comment 4. And by rather wait, I suspect she means nag you about either getting a better job or taking out a loan to pay for what she wants. Don't do this to yourself, man. OOP. Yeah, she told me I could start selling some of the furniture I make, which is something I do as a hobby that she wants me to turn into a second job. Update. Here's a link to my last post, but it got deleted. To summarize, I proposed to my GF on a nice vacation and she rejected it because she knew it was coming and there wasn't a photographer. Thank you all for your comments and messages. Sorry I couldn't respond to most, but I read them all. I decided to try and talk about it with her one last time before throwing in the towel. I wasn't really expecting much, but I just wanted to see if she'd see my side. She lives with me, so I wanted to end things on a good note. She didn't understand at all. She was still saying I needed to work for it and she wasn't taking me seriously, so I broke up with her. Then she told me she accepts my proposal and we're just going through a rough patch, but we will work it out. She was really trying to get me to change my mind and was promising me she would be better to me. She completely ignored me every time I told her we're breaking up and was always yelling over me about how we were going to work things out now that we're engaged, and eventually I just got tired and went to sleep, thinking it was perfectly clear that it was over. I woke up Saturday to a whole bunch of messages. She found the ring and took a pic with it announcing our engagement and tagged me in it on Facebook. We got into another huge fight and eventually I just called her parents and told them to come pick up all her shit or it's going to the dump as soon as she leaves. They were surprisingly understanding. Her dad seemed really embarrassed by her, but they were a huge help. I know it's illegal to do that and I was supposed to actually evict her, but she got seriously violent and I didn't want her in my house anymore. She smashed my iPad and knocked my PlayStation off the TV stand and both are completely broken, so I didn't want to wait around and see what else she would do. She wouldn't even give me the ring back. Her dad had to guilt her into it. It was pretty pathetic. So that's the end of us. Really sucks I wasted the last 4 years with her, but I guess it was better to get out now. It's nice that I can hang out with all my friends again. A girl I'm friends with asked me out on a date, so that's what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm actually pretty nervous. I know it's way too early, but even if it doesn't work out, it should be fun to start dating again. TL.er, broke up with GF, and she decided that meant we were engaged. Then she threw a fit and broke my iPad and PlayStation. Relevant comments. Comment 1. A girl I'm friends with asked me out on a date, so that's what I'm doing tomorrow. Too soon, bro. OOP. She knows the entire situation. It's not serious. She told me years ago she had a crush on me, but we're good friends now. Who knows what will happen? Comment 2? Perhaps this is why your crazy ex did not like your girlfriends. Oopie. Yeah, that's what started it. I don't blame my girlfriend for that. I shut my friend down then and told my girlfriend about it because I didn't want to keep things from her. I don't think I did anything wrong in that situation, but after that she didn't want me talking to any women.